Everybody, welcome to Mongols. I am Mike. With me is Kev, Josh, and River Hounds assistant coach Dan Visser. Coach, this feels like it's been a long time coming. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, happy to be here.
Listen, I mean, obviously, I think we've seen you. You're sort of this stalwart on the sidelines for the past few years. What, 5 years now? 5, 6 years?
6 years, entering year 7. I mean, there's that half year in 2016. I came partway through, but I've been here since. So first kind of year and a half with Dave, and then the last whatever it's been, 4 years with Bob. So
Four going on 40 with Bob. How would you describe your sort of day-to-day role in the team? I think obviously Bob is very visible and out there, sort of yelling on the sidelines. How do you sort of fit in, and what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously my title is his assistant, his assistant coach, which I'm very much his assistant in terms of just he's the man in terms of running the pro team, and then I do a lot to just kind of help him execute that vision. And I would say that it's evolved over the last 4 years, which is something that I've really enjoyed. I think as I've gotten to know kind of what it is that he's looking for and his vision for what things should look like, he's also kind of trusted me with more and more. So in terms of the day-to-day, I mean, it's a lot of small things kind of behind the scenes. In the off season, I'll get questions sometimes from people like, hey, what do you do in the off season? Like, do you just have 2 months off? And very much that's not the case. It's stuff like just prepping for the season. I do a lot with our gear. So that's ordering it all from Adidas and making sure it gets in, and then getting it decorated and with all the logos and all that kind of stuff. And then as we sign new players, getting the numbers on it and kind of coordinating that. So that's one thing. I do a lot with the player apartments. So that's making sure they all have furniture, making sure that that we've got enough beds for everybody over there in terms of just enough rooms. And, that puzzle changes as you've got some guys that are staying by themselves or maybe have families. And so I do a lot of the communicating with the apartments, just a lot of like other random stuff, as I do a lot of stuff for our combine. So in the off season, Bob is very involved with that as well, and we kind of work together to fill it in terms of getting the players in and who we want to look at. I probably lean more towards talking with the college coaches, and Bob leans more towards talking with agents, but he also talks with some college coaches, and I also talk with some agents. So there's definite overlap there. But then a lot of the logistics of just travel arrangements for guys coming in. They stay in a hotel locally, so just kind of coordinating that. So
Lots of hats.
When we travel, I do a lot of that stuff. John Rotz, who's been with the club a long time, he does a lot of that as well, but he doesn't travel with us. So I'm kind of the guy on the ground and help to manage some of that stuff. So that's a few things, but a lot of kind of the more like detailed things that happen behind the scenes.
Yeah, lots and lots of hats. You mentioned the combine. Just curiously, how do you go about filling a combine? Like, is it people coming to you and saying, "Hey, we think we have the right guy for you," or is it you watching tape and saying, "Hey, we want this guy there"? Like, how does that typically work out?
Yeah, I'd say it's both. There's a lot of we're getting in the off season. We're getting emails constantly from agents. And so you might have an email with 20 guys on it, and then it's kind of just looking for who makes sense. Not everybody's going to be interested in coming to a combine. You've got some free agents that are a little more well established, so those aren't always going to be guys that are coming into an event like that. Somebody like Dane Kelly, obviously, he was not a guy coming to the combine, but it's some younger guys, so college players, but then also some guys that maybe have just had a few years in the league, or I don't know. It could be a variety of different situations. I do a lot of talking with college coaches, and then so that's a lot of times initiated by me. But then also as you start to kind of form that relationship, maybe you haven't touched base with them yet this year, but then you've established that relationship. So then they're reaching out. Hey, I've got a play. I didn't have a player last year, but I've got a player this year for you. I think he'd be good. And then we do screen it heavily. I mean, we end up with like 45 guys there. It's not difficult at all to fill a combine with 45 guys. It is more challenging to fill a combine with 45 good players. And so that's kind of the goal is to try to get that level very good. One, because then we obviously want to sign good players at the end of the day, but sometimes even if there's good players in the combine, but the level isn't good, it can be hard to really have a good assessment. So you want to, make sure that the players come in that, that there's a certain level that's maintained.
Have you ever run into a scenario where there's a guy that you're like, no, you got to come into the combine, and they're like, no, we're too good for the combine. Like, you need to sign us. Have you
Sure.
ever had to have that battle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the time. Yeah. And it's funny, like, especially with agents, like you're talking to the same guys all the time. I'm not going to name any names, and not that you necessarily know them anyway, but it's funny. Like, it just happened, and there was a player who didn't want to come in, and I really thought he should have. And then I got a call just the other day, and it was kind of like, hey, he's still available. And I'm like, nope, we're we're looking at a couple guys that came through our combine. So I slipped that one in there. So, but it's fair. I mean, look, at the end of the day too, like they only have so much time, players, they only have so much time, so many resources. They can't go to every combine under the sun. Right. So I get it. They're making decisions. So it is what it is. But yeah, for sure, sometimes it's players don't want to come in, and you might throw the invitation out there expecting that maybe they won't. And sometimes guys surprise you as well, and maybe they do. They do come in. So
one of the things I'm always curious about in talking to different coaches is sort of a lot of times we want to get tied up in the day to day and exactly what goes on with the team, what's going on right now. And I'd like to sometimes take a step back and think about how you sort of got to where you are. So in terms of when you look out, across all the coaches in America and Europe and wherever, is there any that you sort of look at and you draw inspiration from, or you're like, I think that guy's doing it right, and like if I get my shot, I'm going to do it like him? Is there anyone that you're sort of trying to emulate in that way, or just, like I said, anyone that sort of gives you that spark of inspiration to just keep pushing forward as a coach?
Yeah, I think that there's obviously multiple facets to coaching, right? So there's the soccer specific stuff that you're not really going to draw from coaches in other sports. And so for that, I wouldn't say that there's anybody that I lean on too heavily, but definitely paying attention to what kind of the big names are doing, whether that's Guardiola or Klopp or Tuchel, some big ones right now. I think that it's always interesting to see what those guys are doing tactically. I've paid a lot of attention recently to I don't know why, I've gotten very into just watching the U.S. national team. Probably has to do quite a bit with Christian Pulisic and kind of the relationship with Mark Pryor. And so there's some added kind of desire to maybe watch those games with Chelsea as well. But yeah, just kind of watching that, seeing what Berhalter does, seeing what some different people are doing. But I think in addition to that, looking at, even just some of the personalities of coaches that maybe I think I'm a little more similar to. A coach that stands out for me is like a Brad Stevens, who I think he's just a pretty laid back guy. Obviously, he's not coaching at the moment, but he was with the Celtics prior and with Butler before that. So just watching interviews, watching his sideline demeanor, and knowing that it doesn't always need to be, as big of a personality on the sideline, because I'm maybe not always quite that. And you've got a guy like Bob who's more demonstrative. You've got a guy like Dave Brandt before that who's more demonstrative. And I think I tend to be a little bit more even keeled. And sometimes I'm like, is that going to work? And to see some coaches that it does work for. I think you always need to be yourself. And so, yeah, that's a few examples.
You mentioned, Dave and Bob, and, the fact that you've been here for sort of 6 years. How has your role sort of changed, or maybe what have you learned from Dave that you then, maybe didn't learn from Bob, or vice versa? What's it been like coaching under both of them, and what changes have you seen throughout the organization as a result of it?
Yeah. So, I mean, my history with Dave goes back all the way to my college playing days. So I played for him at Messiah. So he was kind of my first introduction to I think really good coaching. And it was a really serious approach. Like, practice mattered. Soccer was important. And it was also two things. It was kind of the culture mattered. The culture of the team was super important. And so Messiah was a place where I made, my best friends, and it was just, I think, a really high level culture, and we achieved a lot of success there. But then it was also from Dave, it was about a lot more than soccer. So it was about kind of personal growth and leadership and things like that. So that, that kind of started my coaching journey, just to kind of witness somebody do it at a really high level. Then I was always interested in working for him. So got the opportunity to do that at the Naval Academy, and then followed him to the River Hounds. And then with Bob, those two guys are actually, I see a lot of similarities in them. Both super intense guys, both guys that are super committed to their teams, guys that are, they hold super high standards, and they're gonna push players to achieve those standards. And that's not always comfortable for everyone involved, but I think ultimately at the end of the day, it's an opportunity for players to grow, and it's an opportunity for the team to achieve success. I think specifically from Bob, to kind of get at that one specifically, like, I've learned a lot from him. I've learned a lot from him on building the team, building the roster in the off season. There's a lot that goes into that, and just a lot of kind of feel, and how are we selecting players? There's a lot of timing involved. And then I think during the year, it's tactically, I think he's super, super smart. Just the way that he goes about it. I've taken a lot from him there as well.
So kind of switching the focus to players, so coaches, specifically with the Riverhounds, who do you think the best player you've coached has been? Or like, just not even like the best players in like tactics wise, but like the best to coach more specifically. I
mean, I think maybe the obvious one, but I think it's a true one. Like Canardo's, I think, the best player that I've coached since I've been here. He's so smart, like, just on the field. It's even interesting today during training, Bob was kind of working with the other group. So he's kind of focusing on them and some of their defensive shape. And so then the other group maybe has a little more freedom to do some stuff. And he's starting to like direct traffic and push some guys in some different places. And I'm kind of working with a guy playing left back and just having some small conversations with him. And Kenny kind of comes over and he starts to kind of direct traffic on that side. And I just was like, do your thing, man. Like, he's not doing it as a coach in that sense, like, but he's just trying to like move some guys around and trying to kind of break the other team's press, which was a lot of what we were working on. And so good. I mean, he's trying to cause problems for that group, which then they have to solve. But some things like that. I mean, Kenny's a fun player to coach for sure.
Essentially, like, cause I would think that like the older players have been around longer, that they would be more like set in their ways, or like kind of know what they're doing. So they don't, I don't know. I would always assume that they wouldn't take coaching as easily as like a new player where you kind of mold them. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, he's a special player for sure. And I'm impressed by kind of at his, like, I don't even know how old he is now, 30, 32, 33. But he shows up every day, and, he's a good leader on the team, for sure.
So switching the focus to the Montour complex, like, just curious how that is going to change how you guys are coaching and how the team works going forward. Do you think it will change anything? It seems like a pretty huge deal to have that complex available.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I think it changes some things for sure, like organizationally, especially kind of on the academy side, and the ability to run some bigger tournaments and some different things like that. On the pro side, I think that there's a lot of kind of perks that come along with it. Obviously, access to an indoor field is a nice thing to have in the off season, especially when you're going through preseason in February in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, right? So I was actually just over there today, kind of looking at some stuff, and there's walls up, there's drywall up. So at this point, like, there's not a lot of changes being made, but just kind of talking with kind of the lead there about some different things that maybe we're looking to do inside of that space. I don't know how much it changes it like fundamentally, but because I think I'm just often of the belief that you don't really need that much to be successful. Like, you need a team, and you need a field, and you need some pretty basic equipment. But there's a lot of, I think, just nice stuff. I think the partnership with Allegheny Health has been good. I think that will continue to get stronger. I think we'll have I think a lot of kind of like different recovery stuff available to us that we have available now. We just have to kind of drive to get it done. This is a little bit more of a one-stop shop, I think. Yeah, I think it's really cool. I think the players are going to enjoy it. I think we're going to enjoy it as coaches as well. Maybe that helps to draw some players in, but yeah, I think it's a really big move for the organization as a whole.
Laura Ellen just asked on YouTube. She said, "Is it as big of a recruitment tool as we think?" Have you guys seen that at all? Like, obviously, different facilities can be that one little thing that can help a player decide between two different places. Is it at a state now where players are looking at that and saying that would be really cool to play there? Or is that still too early for that you guys are seeing?
Yeah, I think maybe we'll see that effect more next year, just because even when you were building the roster out this offseason, there wasn't really a lot to show people. We talked about it for sure, and I think it certainly shows an owner that's super committed, which I think matters. But I think next year, yeah, I think to be able to just kind of explain some of the different things that we have going on in terms of that facility, I think that stuff does matter. It's a little different than maybe like college where you're bringing guys onto campus and kind of showing them all that. But yeah, I think it can have a really positive effect.
So something else kind of unique is our pitch, our actual field at Highmark Stadium. And I'm just curious, when you're picking players or trying to figure out the team, are there aspects that Highmark kind of you have to like think about when you're recruiting players, or is the field not as big of a deal? Because I feel like Highmark is like a little bit smaller. It's a turf. Like, what kind of things do you have to take into consideration with that?
I don't think we do anything differently because of playing. I agree it's a little bit of a smaller field, and so maybe even that affects our tactics versus maybe when we're on the road, it's maybe a little bit easier to press there than it is on some really big fields. But in terms of like the specific recruitment of players, I wouldn't say that is really a factor.
So getting into the preseason a bit, how much do you pay attention to like what else is going on around the league? Like, looking at other Eastern Conference rivals and seeing what they're doing and seeing how they're recruiting, or seeing maybe how they finished up last year, coaching changes, etc. I know the kind of line that gets put out there by a lot of coaches is, we just focus on ourselves. But how aware are you guys at what's going on with your rivals?
Yeah, I'm pretty aware, and I'm probably following a lot of the same stuff you guys are, in terms of just seeing what's been put out on Twitter and social media and different things. The other thing that I might have access to is just conversations with agents, that are kind of in the know a little bit as to what's going on. I don't know how much it totally affects what we do. So, why am I paying attention to it? Like, I think it's interesting. I don't know. I think it's interesting. I do think that, yeah, you don't want to get caught behind what other teams are doing. I think it's also just interesting because a lot of times when a player signs with a club, that player was maybe presented to you already once. And so then you're like, and maybe you were interested, maybe you weren't. So maybe you passed on him, but then you see him land with another club and you're like, oh, I don't know. I just think it's interesting sometimes from that aspect to kind of see where guys go, because I would say that a good percentage of the time when a player signs somewhere, like, you were maybe involved in kind of at least looking at them, and, maybe we've got too many players at that position, or maybe we expected that the money was going to be something that we didn't quite value them the same as what maybe another club did, or whatever it may be. But yeah, I don't know how much it really affects us, but I do find it interesting, and I just like to kind of have a pulse on what's going on.
Yeah, no, for sure. I guess keeping on that theme of kind of player movement and player availability, what are your thoughts on the MLS Next Pro program? And how do you think that might change any player availability things for you guys moving forward?
Yeah, that's definitely something we paid attention to. because now, in the past, I think when you look at a lot of players drafted, they don't always land with the team that drafts them. Obviously, you had some clubs, in USL Championship and USL League One, whether that's a Red Bull or a Loudoun or a Atlanta United or whatever it may be, so that that still existed, that a player could potentially be drafted by Atlanta and then not stick with the first team but sign with the second team. But when you get to a point where like every team has a second team, it makes a difference. So I've gone through the drafts last year, and I went through the draft last year, and like all these players get drafted to teams without second teams. So those players are maybe a little more likely to fall out. And so I just think that there's a wider net to kind of catch some of those types of players. I think what has surprised me a little bit is there have been players that have been kind of offered those second team contracts that have maybe chosen to look at the USL Championship as a maybe a better option for them. I think some of that is just speculative, because I think that there's a lot of just unknowns as to what MLS Next is going to be exactly. And I'm sure different clubs are handling it differently in terms of, how young they're going, and just how they're looking to build out their rosters. But I know there have been a number of players that have opted to not sign with those two teams, and are looking for, were looking for championship jobs or are looking for championship jobs. It affected our combine too, actually, because there was a lot of guys, it just seemed to be like more combines, so like, for example, like a Columbus Crew puts on a combine, and so now they're drawing a lot of the same players that we would have been interested in bringing into ours. And, some of them are choosing to go to that one, even though it's not really a look for their first team. It might be a look for their second team, but, those guys are making decisions as to what avenues they want to pursue.
Do those combines typically happen right around the same time? Do you guys find yourself competing with like MLS for combine time?
I mean, this year the off season was only like 2 months, right? Or whatever it was. So like, there's only so much time to squeeze that stuff in. And obviously you've got Christmas and New Year's in there as well. And so, as well as Thanksgiving. So, yeah, I mean, we try to avoid the MLS combine, kind of the official one. But you're going to run into some stuff, especially in the past. This year we only held one. In the past we've held two. So, if we're aware of some stuff, then maybe we'll try to dodge it. But, maybe you didn't even realize that whoever Loudoun is hosting a combine on that same date. And then it just, players have to make choices. So, yeah.
Can you maybe talk a little bit about your kind of coaching relationship and the player relationship with Pitt? Because we're seeing a few more players kind of coming from Pitt coming to the Hounds roster. I mean, obviously there's this kind of natural pool of talent that's in the city, and that makes it's kind of an ease of use kind of thing to be closely connected with them. But I guess, how do you guys see the kind of Hounds Pitt connection as far as a potential pool of players, or and how much do you kind of recognize maybe that's just too easy to do, and are we actually overlooking some things? Or I guess how does that play out in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is obviously a product of them being as good as they are, and how far they've come in the last however long Jay's been there, 7 years. So I'd say that's a product of some of it. Robbie and Shane had played there, but those guys obviously went to Loudoun first and played, and then kind of returned. So maybe it's a little bit easier for them to return here. You're also sometimes maybe just getting some guys that go there that are more local to Pittsburgh. So like some guys from the Cleveland area. And so then it's more, they were close to Pitt. They're also close to the University of Pittsburgh. So it's a little bit of a regional thing, just as to where they're from. But I think I hope the connection continues, because they've got a lot of really good players, and I expect them to continue to have a lot of really good players. There's a comfortability with us being able to see them more. Bob went to a lot of, I went to some, but Bob went to a lot of those Pitt games. And so, player like Arturo, you've just watched play quite a bit. And so There's a draw there because there's a comfortability with a player that you've seen. I think it's always, when I'm thinking about signing a player, it's I think about it like, it's how good is he, but then also how sure am I in my assessment of him. So I might think a player is quite good, but it's hard. It's hard to really push to pull that trigger unless you're really sure, which is why combines help. It's why bringing players in on trial and preseason help. And I think the more you're able to see a player, the more comfortable, the more confident you can be that your read is potentially correct.
Go ahead, Mike. I was going to say this is probably more of a statement than a question, but you mentioning that you and Bob spent a lot of time at the Pitt games. I wonder what that's also doing for the Pitt program, having their players know that you have coaches from a USL Championship team that are coming and watching your games. Are they stepping their games up at Pitt to basically help Pitt be a better team as well? Just because you guys are there and the closeness between the two teams in the city, I think that's all really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take any credit for what they're doing because I think whether we were at those games or not, those guys would have those guys firing on all cylinders.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, potentially to be over there, sometimes it means something to a player that a coach has seen me, and so a player wants to go to an environment that they're potentially going to be successful, and so it's easier sometimes to go to a place where, hey, the coach knows me and the coach still wants me. It's not like he's just taking a flyer out on me and he doesn't really know whether I'll work out or not. But
Yeah. And now I have the imagery in my head of like you and or Bob just like in a hooded jacket on a rainy night, standing on the side by yourself, just watching these games. And
something like that.
Yeah. I guess just I'm going to combine my kind of last two questions here because I have a feeling you won't directly answer the first one because you're a coach. But who do you think will be the breakout player this season, and what are you most looking forward to this season?
Yeah. I probably won't answer that first one. Maybe partially because I maybe shouldn't, but then also maybe partially because I'm not totally sure what to answer. I will say.
I think Kenny could break out this season. I don't know. I'm just he's been quiet.
This year.
Danny Griffin's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say that I expect at the end of the year for us to look at having had I like our rookie class, if I can kind of call them that, like these guys that are fresh out of college. So as to who exactly breaks out, I think we could have more than one. I think we could have multiple. There have been years. So you think kind of back to Bob's first year and, calling it Thomas Van Kajazeel. And then you look to year two and you're calling it Robbie Mertz, right? And then maybe Danny Griffin, so you kind of had these one-off players. I just wouldn't be surprised if at the end of this year we've got a couple guys, multiple guys. I wouldn't be surprised at the end of this year that we're really hoping to bring a number of these young players back, because I think a lot of them can have success, and some of them may need to kind of bide their time a little bit this year. But I think we've got some real depth, and I think they contribute to that. Again, it's fresh, it's early, we haven't lost the game yet, so we'll see. But I do like our rookie class, I should say.
I thought I was excited, and then you say something like that, and now I'm like even more excited. So
3 funky Azeals. That's
right, exactly. Coach, this has been fantastic. We want to be respectful of your time, and we already took 30 minutes of your time. This was great. We really appreciate you coming on and joining us. Obviously, best of luck with the rest of the preseason. And obviously, we're looking forward. The season starts in just a few weeks, which you obviously know. But
Yeah.
we're all looking forward to it. And like I said, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us tonight.
Appreciate you guys having me on. It was fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Coach. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
All right.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
I always forget how I don't want to jump into this right away. I always forget how young Dan is. Like, I always think of him as like this grizzled veteran who's been there forever, and like, no, like dude knows his stuff. Like that was, you know, that was more of a transparent conversation than I think we've gotten with any other coach that we've had on here, about topics that, you know, that we typically don't get into. So I really appreciate him taking the time to dive into some of that stuff. Really, really good stuff.
Like I was really impressed at like the speed. He mentioned, I think before, how he had some experience on, you know, podcast stuff, and like usually I feel like when we have guests on here, there's always that like 2-3 second fumble of them trying to figure out how to disconnect so we can continue the podcast. And he was like, on it. Like, it's just out. All right, sweet.
That's funny.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. So thanks again to Coach Visser. Yeah, we really appreciate talking to him. That was awesome. It's surprising. It's been, you know, he's been in town for 6 years, and we always have like this cycle of like talking to people, and somehow we've never worked him in. But I feel like now I want to talk to him every year, because he'll just tell us really what's going on and be like, this is who to look out for, guys. So that was great. I guess, guys, real quick, a couple of things. I want to talk about the preseason and a couple of things that are going on. But Josh, the last time you were on, we sort of hung it up there about you were going to Disney and you were going to pick a lightsaber color, and everybody is just like waiting on bated breath to know, what is your lightsaber color, Josh?
I chose green. It could go classic. It had to be green, probably, or blue. But actually, it's a little bit of a lie, because I ended up just buying all the different colors of the lightsabers themselves. The way it works with Disney is like you have like a little thing that you put in, like a kyber crystal, if we want to get really nerdy, that you put into the lightsaber. So I just ended up buying all the colors, so that way I could use whichever one I wanted to. But when I built the lightsaber, I chose green.
The first thing you picked up was green, and then you just picked up everything else.
Yeah, it's like I would take green, and then I would take red, and then I would take purple, and then I would take blue and yellow. And
were there any cool colors that you weren't expecting, or was it all just like standard Star Wars fare?
Standard Star Wars fare. And let's be honest, I was nerding out so much before this trip that there was nothing I was not expecting, because I researched it all and like had spreadsheets set up and like, okay, I'm going to do this, going to do that. So. But no, it's a good time. If you've never been to Disney World, which I don't think I need to tell you what it is, it was fun, especially if you're into like any of the properties that they own, since they own pretty much all the properties. I am a little bit sad that Epcot, they are currently building another like area in Epcot for Guardians of the Galaxy and like Avengers stuff, and I was like, that's not open yet. That's sad.
Yeah. Your wife just posted in the chat that hers is purple. Thanks, Liz. Nobody asked. Moving on.
Ouch! Jeez.
now I'm using her own text against her where she said moving on. So there you go. Just kidding. We love you, Liz. Kev, also since our last episode, you turned 30. Is that right? No, I'm just kidding. You did celebrate another birthday, but you're older than 30. So
31. Yeah. 31 feels the same. Although I think my hip might have popped on 31 the morning when I just got out of bed, and it's just like, but yeah, no, feels just
that just continues through the rest of your 30s. Don't worry. Yeah.
I figured.
Happy birthday. Let's talk about the Hounds a little bit. So the hot topic I think that everyone's been talking about for the past few weeks is, when are the Hounds going to sign a keeper? And today they announced we officially signed a keeper. So guys, we could start a game in a few weeks because we'll have a keeper. Kevin Silva. He grew up in Bethlehem, PA, and if you sort of read sort of his backstory a little bit, he was ranked as one of the top 15 players overall in the country when he graduated high school. He was the number one keeper in the country when he graduated high school, went through the whole U.S. youth system thing, went to UCLA, and then left UCLA early to go play in the Scottish Premier League. And during that time was then loaned to Toronto FC and then Toronto FC 2. And now he's here in Pittsburgh. So, guys, we have a keeper. So we can sleep easy on that. Now, whether or not he will be our starting keeper, I don't know. Bob still has a couple of other players in camp. So we will wait and see what happens. But everyone can rest easy. We now have a keeper.
I think, no matter what happens, like, he has to be one of the favorites to win the Gold Glove this year, right? Like, just statistically.
I mean, right? Honestly, that's we should look back. out of the past 4 years, I think Bob has had 2 Golden Gloves. Like 3 were in contention. So yeah, I mean, if you're a keeper at this point, like why wouldn't you sort of look at that and just say like, I want to go to Pittsburgh because like I may be good, but like I could win a Golden Glove and look really good. So yeah.
Are you saying we're gonna get that backup keeper who's playing at City back? We're gonna get him back because he wants to win a Golden Glove at the USL.
No.
All right.
Yeah. No, I mean, as Steve is pointing out in chat, Morton missed the Golden Glove by like 6 minutes. I forgot about that. Where, there was that whole scheduling thing. Yeah. And Silva started both preseason games so far. So he might very well be our starter. So that happened. Speaking of Steve, who is sort of blowing up our chat with all sorts of stats, Steve is going to join us next week. And Steve has been to all the preseason games thus far. He put together sort of a rough idea of how he thinks the Hounds are going to line up to start the season based on the players that we have and based on what he's seen. So we're really looking forward to talking to Steve next week. He's a bit of our boots on the ground this preseason. We might try to line up some Steve getting some footage and doing some interviews there at practice or at the stadium. So if that's something you're interested in, let us know. We might do it regardless because, we just like Steve doing stuff. So, but yeah, next week Steve will be here. One of the things that Steve had pointed out is Wyatt Borso. So Wyatt Borso was with the team last year, and we had talked to a couple of different parents from the academy, and they're like, dude, this guy is legit. Like, you need to watch out. In the same way that they were saying like Robbie Mertz is legit, people were saying that Wyatt Borso is legit. And so he got a few minutes here and there last season, but he's been tearing it up this preseason. So far, he's scored in both of the games that he's played in. He's an academy player on sort of an academy deal right now, and he'll be 18 at the start of the season, but he's already committed to Notre Dame. He's ranked as one of the top 10 forwards in the class of 2022 by Top Drawer Soccer. Steve's saying he looked really good, but
what's his style? Is he fast? Is he
so
tall?
He's a forward. He's a tall forward who's not afraid to take players on, like one-on-one. And he's got a really good first touch and a good finish. So
I just wonder what kind of availability he'll have. I don't think he'll start in front of Kelly, Cicerone, Dixon. I mean, even Dequa's probably ahead of him, maybe, but I don't know.
That's the problem that he's facing right now. Is just that we have 6 strikers on the roster, including him, sort of right now. So, I can't remember the last time we had 6 strikers. Now, the team lists. All of the strikers the team lists on their team sheet have it's Wyatt Borso, Russell, Cicerone, Albert Dequa, Alex Dixon, William Ayang, and Dane Kelly. They also list Dixon as a midfielder, but everyone else was listed as a straight forward. So it kind of makes you wonder, what's going on there?
I mean, either way, I think we can be selfish and say, I think it sometimes gets underestimated how having depth in certain positions helps just with practice. Because now, both sets of defenders get to play against really good forwards, right? So, that's going to be good for practice and training.
Yeah, Steve's comment here is that he feels he's a really good off the bench option to replace Cicerone, and he has the energy to press the defense late in games. I think, Steve, we were talking a little bit earlier today, and he said that, in 2019, he would have probably been the first player off the bench. When we had that season where it's I don't know, and you just have your go-to, he would have been number 1. So
maybe an upgrade on Williamson.
Yeah, potentially.
But it's also good that we're not he's a great player, and he's gonna get minutes. I think it's just gonna be a sub, but it's also probably better that he's not our first choice for everything because he is going to Notre Dame. So it's not like we're gonna have him, consistently the whole season. So.
Yeah, what'll stink is if, he does play with us and he just sort of lights it up and is just everywhere. And then we get to the fall and he's like, sorry, guys, I got to go check into the dorms. Good luck in the playoffs. And we're oh, man.
Yeah.
But, that could be
I'll take it.
I mean, if we're talking playoffs, yeah, we'll see. Otherwise, across the playoffs, we've played 2 games so far. We had one postponed because of weather. One, there was some other scheduling issue. So we played Villanova and Loudoun, 2 wins. So, like, not that we're counting wins, especially early in the preseason. I think we're very much just like, who's standing out? And at this point, it seems like Borso has been one to stand out. We get Indy 11 tomorrow and Louisville on Saturday. So, like, this is where the rubber meets the road a little bit, at least in terms of preseason. Steve mentioned he will not be at Indy 11 tomorrow, but he will be at Louisville on Saturday. So he'll be able to bring that insight to the next show that we do. And then after that, guys, we just have 2 more games left against Pitt and WVU. We literally have 2 shows left and then kick off for the season, which is like crazy.
It's crazy.
So, yeah.
Gonna have to buy that ESPN Plus subscription again.
Well, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that. Is there anything that you guys are looking for? I just mentioned that we sort of look at a lot of these preseason games and take them with a grain of salt. But considering that we're playing both Indy and Louisville, are you guys like, if we draw or we win or we lose, does it make any difference to you, Kev?
I mean, it's funny. I think literally if it was any other team in the East, I'd be like, nope, don't care. But it's Louisville. And I just can't stand losing to Louisville. So
I would say the same thing about Indy.
Yeah,
but I get I don't really have that thing with Indy too much. I think Louisville is just such a solid club, like
an organization,
like through and through. Yeah, and it's something to strive for. I mean, this what, I don't care. We're a fan podcast. I can say whatever I want. But like Indy, I don't whatever. Indy, I'm not too impressed. I'm not impressed with Indy.
Well, that's why I don't want to lose against them though. Like I'm not impressed by them, but I know it's preseason, it doesn't matter, blah blah. And we're going to be testing out guys, so it's not like we're going to be putting our best foot forward necessarily. But you have that whole thing with the Hounds and the perception that we have a late start always every season, where it kind of like takes a while for us to get going, and you don't expect a lot from the first couple of games. So it would just be really nice to see a strong foot going forward. So I know it doesn't matter. I know I shouldn't care, but I do. Still, like you hear that they're playing against Indy, you hear that they're playing against Louis, and you're just like, yeah, I want to see us win those games, even though they don't mean anything as far as like winning them. But it just as a fan, you have that mentality that's like that's putting momentum going forward, and I don't really know if that's true, but it feels like that.
We should ask Dan like how he feels about it, because that would have been an interesting insight. I'm sure from a coach's perspective, you got to be like, well, you just gotta take him out, but I bet Kenny's not thinking that. That insight about Kenny was great. Like,
yeah, right.
Can we see Gaffer Forbes sometime in the future? Probably. Maybe not with the Hounds, but that seems like sort of a cool next step for Kenny. Yeah. All right. Well, like we said, keep an eye on the score from tomorrow. Well, depending on when you're listening, it could be today. We play Indy 11, and then Louisville on the weekend. Both games are at Highmark Stadium and open to the public. So if you want to get down there, watch the game for free, go check it out, scout it out. Let us know what you think. Let us know if there's anybody that's standing out. I think the Steel Army has done a great job of revealing player signings before the Hounds have, because they're hearing Bob yell names and then started quick do a Google search to try to find what name could potentially match it up, and then blowing it up Twitter with hey, this guy might be signing, which is fantastic.
Yeah, there's some cork boards with some red yarn going around. Like that's happening. If you join the Steel Army Discord, you can see the wheels turning there with everyone trying to figure out stuff like that. Also, just want to mention real fast, we speaking of the Steel Army, just announced our AGM meeting / we're having a bit of a kind of get together party the night before the home opener. Ooh. So on Friday, March 18th at 7 p.m. at Bulldog Pub. That's going to be where you can vote for who makes the member representatives. We have 2 of those positions opening up. It's going to be where you can buy your membership package. all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. And then we're also gonna be at Bulldog before that because the home or the season opener. We're also gonna have a watch party there, which is March 12th.
Against Memphis, yeah.
Yes.
And can people still get their membership packages online at steelarmy.com?
Oh yeah, for sure. We have the listing going up, I think, tomorrow. But it's obviously if you want to get it in person, it's a little bit cheaper, and also you just get it instantaneously instead of having to ship it to you. So
yeah. And if you want even more Steel Army, Josh is the president, but even more Steel Army, make sure that you check out the Houndsy podcast, which should now be available pretty much anywhere that you get your podcasts. So you can go search for it on iTunes and Spotify and all of that. Subscribe and hear sort of the take, from Dan and other members of the Steel Army. I think it's fantastic that we, between us and them and everybody else, you could pretty much fill your week just listening about Hounds, and it's still the preseason, which is crazy. So
it's great to actually be able to listen to a Hounds podcast. Like since I'm on this one, I don't listen to it, so it's like sweet, a podcast I can listen to.
You don't listen to yourself. We're not getting your download and listen, Josh.
I still subscribe, so that way pump our numbers up. But
you download but don't listen. Okay.
Yeah, I just delete it.
I don't care. I don't care. That works. Okay. Well, yeah, lots of exciting stuff. Like we said, we really only have 2 shows left before the season starts. So we're going to talk to Steve next week, get some, put on our tinfoil hats and try to predict what the team's starting lineup could look like and how that might fare against somebody like Memphis. And then we'll see what we'll do the week before the season starts. Who knows what's going to happen? We haven't really planned anything yet, but now that makes me want to kind of like scheme and see what we can pull off. So if you have any special requests, let us know. And I think we typically do our get everybody on and do your prediction kind of thing. So we could do that, or we could do something else. Laura Allen just messaged that they're being ignored. You're not being ignored. Yeah. So, okay. Gentlemen, anything else for this one? We're good? Okay.
We're good.
Well, thank you again to Coach Dan Visser for joining us. As I mentioned, fantastic chat. We're going to have to get him back on. Maybe we'll try to get him on mid-season. We always try to get players and coaches on mid-season, and it's always a little bit crazy because of scheduling and things like that. But if we find the right pocket, I think it'd be really good to get his read on just how things are going. So we'll try to make that happen. Make sure you head over to mongols.com, click on support the show to become a Patreon follower. As I mentioned, go find Houndsy, the Steel Army podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. Your weekly reminder that obviously Black Lives Matter, as always. And if you're looking for more great USL news, head over to bgn.fm, where we now have over 100 fans that are writing and podcasting about the beautiful game. Lots of great features that go up on the site every single week. Go check them out at bgn.fm. Otherwise, thanks, everybody. We will talk to you very, very soon.
Cheers.
Later.